everyone. Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. I'm excited. We have two of my collaborators, Omar and Kristina. Wave to everybody. They can all see you. All right. Thanks for coming this morning. This is an exciting topic. It's as exciting as reporting can be. Let's be honest. It's how reporting. So, but we think that we have some interesting things to discuss. So here's what I want to pledge to you. So this is a litigation. My two panel members and myself, we have two goals today. The first goal is that we will convince you, everyone in this room, that there is a need, a desperate need for a standardized reporting protocol for higher education and sustainability. All right, so that's going to be our job, is to convince you of that. And I hope after we go through our slides, we'll make a case that that's it. So that's our objective number one. The objective number two is to use all of you to help us create a deliverable. And a deliverable at the end of this workshop, it's a workshop, so we're going to work. The deliverable at the end of this is to try to come up with a framework of what that protocol might be. So those are our two goals. And Kristina and Omar and I will try to move this. All right. So let me just get started. And I am legally obligated by my university to show you a picture of my campus. I think everyone has to do that. Okay, this is Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, overlooking the beautiful Clearwater Bay in eastern Hong Kong. And here's our group. This is our sustainability net zero office. Our president really insisted that we add net zero. He thought that was important. We're the sustainability office. He thought that wasn't enough. We really wanted to focus on the net zero. And so that's what we do. Okay, so let me make the case for reporting and why we think it's important. So, if I could just move this a little bit. Most of us, I think, and we have a lot of data, and Omar and Kristina will talk about this in just a minute. Most of us do some form of reporting. Some of us have been reporting for 10 or 15 years. Some of us have just gotten started. Some of us have little bits and pieces. But I think the thing that's really struck me, I'm from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very business-centric city. You know, we are the gateway to China. There's a lot of consulting firms, finance firms. It's really, very, very business-centric. And so we kind of are, like it or not, we're influenced by our surroundings. And so what we're noticing is that there's just a lot of focus on corporate reporting. And this is a quote from the website, which talks about sustainability reports. And from a business perspective, this is what they're looking at. Sustainability reports are the primary way organizations publicly communicate their environmental risks, opportunities, and practices to stakeholder groups like investors, government, regulators, partners, employees, and customers. So each one can make informed decisions. And I'd just like to highlight two parts of this, which is the risks and opportunities and informed decisions. I would say that for most of us at the universities, we don't do this with our reports. Our reports tend to be, in some cases, they tend to be PR documents, right? Look at all the great things that we did. Look at all these pictures of students and faculty and researchers doing wonderful things. But a real report is going to provide critical information for either your staff or your stakeholders to be looking at things like risks and opportunities. And the business sector is not the only sector that is vulnerable to climate change risk, financial risk, and so forth. And we need to be able to make informed decisions. Now, who needs to make informed decisions? Our senior leadership, right? President, provost, our board of trustees. In our case, it's our council members. Well, how can they make informed decisions if they're not seeing the true data from a report? Not just a fluff piece that makes us look good, but actual data that says we do have some vulnerabilities in certain sectors, either in our water consumption or energy consumption. Pricing for carbon, if you're in Europe, you probably already know that you might be paying a price for carbon, but in Asia we don't, but it could be coming. And The senior leaders need to know that. And private sector gets that. They understand. These are voluntary reporting for GRI. GRI is one of the agencies that has a protocol for ESG, environmental, social, and environmental or governance reporting. And as you can see, the private sector has really taken off in terms of reporting, and there's a good reason for it, because countries all around the world are starting to require it. And you can see in Europe, okay, that's not a surprise. Europe has always been at the forefront on the environmental side. I think Europe has always been one step ahead, but there are some kind of surprises here. How about Australia with their reporting requirements that are coming? Australia gets a lot of their funding from coal. They use coal, they sell coal, but even Australia is starting to require, can't see it up there, but their requirements for reporting. Hong Kong, my city, climate disclosures are now mandatory for all privately traded companies on the Hong Kong or the Hang Seng Stock Exchange. China is now looking, and even India. So think about India and China, two of the largest emitting countries in the world, and they're all putting together reporting requirements. So what does that mean for us? Well, this is what the protocols look like, and there's a lot of them. Some of them you may recognize, some of them you may not, but these are generally the kinds of protocols that are rising because of government requirements for transparency and reporting. Okay, some of them may be a little bit more specialized. The task force on climate-related financial disclosures is a big one that's focusing exclusively on what is the climate risk for your company, and you need to be able to disclose certain things. SASB is about the sustainable accounting, and then of course there's future fit and GRI. These are two ESG kind of more standard reporting protocols. So these reporting protocols have really grown up in the vacuum of a need for companies to have some kind of a structure. Okay. Now, what you also notice is that very few, if none of these, perhaps, really apply to higher education. Okay. And why is that? Well, this is a materiality matrix. If some of you may know, some of you may use this. This is basically what you do in business to show what is material. In other words, what is going to be influencing your ability to make money. And so all private sectors, companies in reporting are required to put together a materiality matrix. So why don't we do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Well, there are no mandatory requirements for higher education. We are mostly nonprofits, or even if we're private sector, if we're private schools, there's not a reporting body. And so we've never had the urgency to do this. And there's no, at least we don't have investors, right? So private sector is being driven by the fact that people are now looking at their money as large funding agencies or investors, and they're saying, if I'm going to put my money into your company, I need to know how safe is my company in terms of your risk to climate change and water scarcity, and labor disputes, and all kinds of other things. Those are the kinds of things that come up in ESG reports, but we don't have the financial pressure. We don't have investors who are breathing down our neck saying, I've given you a lot of money. I want to see how at risk is my funding. And which also means that the governing bodies are not really focused on material. So these are all material factors. This is what you put into a materiality matrix. But generally speaking, our board of trustees or council members, they're not asking us for that, because this, to them, what's material is, publications and prestige and rankings. It's not about risks. So we have a misalignment with our governing bodies. And then finally, I think that most of us have been doing some sort of reporting, and so we don't feel an enormous amount of pressure because we already have annual sustainability reports. Most of us already do, so it looks like we're doing something good, and we are, and I think we should take credit for that. But we are missing some critical pieces here. So here's the argument for a standard for a higher ed reporting protocol. Number one, the movement in the private sector is creating some urgency for us, right? So we had some great conversations yesterday about what are the great roles of higher ed and what can we do? We build bridges and we're objective. But if we look like we're one step behind, then we start to lose that brand. We're not as good as people want us to be if it looks like we can't keep up. We're not the ones who are doing things, and the private sector is one step ahead of us. Number two, we will benefit from a consistent protocol because it means that outsiders can compare us, right? The one real key ingredient of an ESG report for the private sector is that any investor or any stakeholder can take a look at a report and they'll see a consistency in the protocol and they'll know what is involved and what's not involved. It will be very obvious that something was missing and they'll be able to use that. Well, we don't have that for higher ed. And so that consistency to benchmark, I think, is quite important. And then number three, and then maybe this is the strongest argument of all, this will ensure transparency, accountability, and responsibility at the highest levels of our leadership. So if you have sustainability offices or sustainability groups, and you're doing a lot of really good stuff, but it's not percolating up to senior leadership, this is the way to get it. The senior leadership must sign off on an ESG report. They don't have to sign off on a sustainability report, which means that your president and your board of directors are accountable now, right? If your diversity goals, which are listed clearly in your report, if you're not making progress on that, that will come out because this report forces you to be transparent, and your president will have to answer questions to that, which of course they don't want to do. So that makes a bit of more urgency for senior leadership to pay a lot more close attention to sustainability. Okay, so that's my piece. I'm going to turn it over here to Omar, who's going to talk a little bit about a survey that they took and some research to back up some of the things that I just said. So
thank you. Would you mind? Yes, absolutely. Great. Can you hear me already?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can everyone hear me or just you? Okay, I think I understood that everyone can hear me. Thank you very much. Is this the right screen or are you seeing my presenter view?
Omar, can you put it, we're seeing your presenter.
Yes, that's what always happens. Just a second, swap, here we go. So this is accurate now? Good. So this is my legal obligation to show you a drone view of Zurich. This is ETH Zurich's main building. If you haven't had the chance yet to visit Switzerland, please do so. Which takes me to just a second. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So yeah, thank you, Davis. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Thanks, Davis, for setting the stage. Thanks to everyone who's making this hybrid situation happen. It's great to see all of you in the Mexican morning. I can see the sun is shining. Excellent. So thanks for setting the stage. Thanks for developing the argument. And yeah, before really starting with the brainstorming that Davis has been talking about on how to improve the current situation of reporting at higher ed institutions, as you said, I would like to share some insights from a survey that we conducted last year, which further substantiates the argument, which is precisely the need to reduce the level of heterogeneity in the way we report at the moment. So we conducted a survey last year in view of the increasing relevance of sustainability in higher education, and not only in research, but precisely also in teaching and planning and operations and other contexts. So basically in all areas of university life, of higher institution life, sustainability has become more and more relevant. And we developed this survey with basically two aims in mind. The first of which is to really get a feeling of what's really already out there in terms of existing practices and how do higher education institutions report on sustainability at the moment. And secondly, to see how we could identify challenges and opportunities and ideally develop some policy recommendations, or more specifically, even a common standard. So on this slide, just for you to see who's been involved in developing this survey. It's been there's a working group which has been working on rankings, on metrics, sustainability reporting so far. And we have representation from Portugal, from Cyprus, from Australia, from Sweden, from Switzerland, and other countries that helped us in developing this survey. So we made sure that to get as many voices as possible in the process. We have sent out the survey around autumn last year for a couple of weeks. People had the chance. We invited people from ISCN institutions, but also from beyond ISCN institutions to respond. We received around 80 responses from roughly 30 countries, covering quite a good region, quite a wide range of regions in the world. And maybe some of you in the room have already have also participated in the survey. In case you have, thank you very much. Has any one of the people in the room participated in the survey? Could you raise your hand? I would be curious to see if anyone has. I don't see any hands. Okay.
A couple.
Well, a couple. I don't see the full panorama view of the people in the room. But anyway, very good. So it's been roughly 80 responses. We have covered 3 different sections in the report, covering sustainability strategy of the respondents' institution, really how reporting is currently perceived as a process, and the impacts of the sustainability reporting up until now. I want to share with you a few insights from each of these sections, just to pave the way for where we're heading to today. So first section was specifically about, we were curious about how strongly embedded the topic of sustainability is, taking, for example, these 2 proxies, these aspects as proxies. So you have, on the one hand, on the left-hand side, is question number 14, which asks, does your institution define sustainability goals? Yes, that's the vast majority of respondents said that yes, my institution defines sustainability goals. And the one on the right-hand side is also an interesting approximation of how important the topic of sustainability is in the institution, precisely looking at the different networks or alliances that the individual institution is affiliated with, be it on the regional level, which is the green chart, the green bar, the national level, the blue one, or the international level, the yellow one. So most of the institutions have affiliations with different networks on all these 3 levels, which we found quite impressive. Now, looking at the second section of the survey, this is about really, I mean, everyone who's been working and reporting, and I assume most of you in the room have, you know that this is less about the deliverable. This is less about the report itself as a product, but mostly about the process, which is about some kind of transformation. So we asked, for example, whether or not the institution would report on sustainability at this moment. And here too, we have a vast majority of people saying yes, but also, which I personally found very interesting, we asked how many people in your institution, or even looking at external providers, were actually engaged in your reporting process. And you can see that it's quite impressive. There's some institutions where more than 30 people, or even 10 to 30 people have been engaged in the reporting process. From my perspective, I've been in charge of the ETH Zurich sustainability report. We've had up to 70 people engaged in the process, which goes to show that this is a very stakeholder intensive activity. You can do it like this, and we've done it like this for a good reason, precisely because we want to engage with people and shed some light into the entire institution, and also get opinions and perspectives from as many people as possible. The third section was about, you could say, on the one hand, about stakeholder, like what you can see, it's very much about stakeholder engagement. One very interesting finding goes to show that the stakeholder engagement doesn't stop at the campus borders. You can see, yes, internal stakeholders. I mean, the question is, how many do you engage with stakeholders in your reporting process? Yes, with internal ones, with external ones, or with both, which is the yellow bar. And you can see that indeed very many of the respondents engage with both of the stakeholder groups, internal, external, and both at the same time, which goes to show that you can use interviews, surveys, or workshops. We've interviewed, for example, people from peer institutions around the world, media, people from the public, because we are a publicly funded institution and there is some sort of pressure to be transparent, you could say, and people from industry, which ultimately gets all the people that we prepare for their working life. Now, question number 40 on the right-hand side is a very interesting one, because we were asking people about what other impacts of sustainability reporting do you observe? And you can see that this one respondent said the positive one is that the reporting helps us to develop some sort of a healthy competition and continuous improvement. And the negative one, which goes in a similar line, interestingly, is that if we're not using a common framework, it might be hard to compare. Which brings us right into another very interesting finding that is relevant for today, which is summarized on this slide. Here on the left, question number 17, this highlights a significant variety of how institutions are reporting at the moment, be it a sustainability chapter in the annual report, or a standalone report on sustainability, or a website, or dashboards and others. So there's a whole variety among the respondent institutions how they currently report about sustainability. And more telling is even the bar chart on the right-hand side, in which we asked about which standards, and Davis mentioned many of them already in the introduction, were being used. And here we also see that the picture is super heterogeneous. Of the roughly 62 institutions that responded, we have quite a plethora of different standards being used for reporting purposes. Now, these were some of the findings that got us thinking, and I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective from the participants in Mexico. But before, I would like to hand over to my colleague Kristina in Sweden, who will share some additional thoughts and a preliminary synthesis of the survey. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Omar, for handing over to me. I will also share the screen. Can you hear me? I have the same question as Omar. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's nice. And you can also see my presentation. I will share it now. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, good. First of all, I will just have a short introduction. My name is Kristina von Oelreich, and I'm working as the Sustainability Manager at KTH in Stockholm, Sweden. And I'm also the head of the Sustainability Office. And we are 7 persons together with me, who is working with the integration of sustainability in all our operations at KTH. And I'm so happy to have the possibility to be here today, even if it's not in person. But I'm also happy that we have worked with this survey, and now also can share the result. That is so important, and to have your feedback and your thoughts about this. So I would like then to focus on what specific topics that was covered in this reporting and the question we had for that. And I will also present the drivers for reporting, why it's so important or not so important. And then also I would like to share my conclusion about this survey. And I have worked a very long time with reporting at universities, and we also are taking part of Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. And we will soon also have the result from QS ranking. So this is something that I really think is important for us as universities. And I think we will also have some good coming from this survey and this workshop today. So I would like to start then with education. And we had a question about which education specific topics do you cover regularly in your reporting? And as you see here, we can see that we are reporting about education for sustainability. And of course, that is quite natural because that is our main mission as universities. We also report on courses and degree curricula, continuing education, and also about employee training. And then we also have some other topics that also was mentioned. But I think it's very interesting to see here that also what I would like to highlight later on is that the employee training is also very important, of course, if we are going to integrate sustainability in our education and program and courses. But we are reporting on this topic, and of course, we are also reporting on research-specific topics. And we report on research for sustainability and also about knowledge and transfer and research ethics. That was a little bit surprise for me. I haven't seen that so much, but that is also included in the reporting. And then also we had a question about which campus-specific topics do you cover in your reporting? And here you can see it's a lot of different topics that we are reporting on. If we look at the result, we can see that energy, and we have recycling and waste, and reporting on greenhouse gas emissions, and also buildings. And then we can also see that we are reporting on mobility and campus development. That's the top 5 that we are reporting according to. And I'm thinking about this when I see the result, and I think this is where we have a lot of laws and regulation also to report on. So I'm not really surprised about that we are reporting on these campus-specific topics. But still we can see it's also other topics, and I think it's interesting the procurement part also as a topics that we also report on. So this was very interesting to see. And then we also have some questions about the governance specific topics that we report on. And we can see that compliance is on the top, you see on the left hand. And then we also report on investments, sustainable finance is number 3. And then we also report on funding. And I think also that it's very interesting that we are reporting on digitization. And I think this is something that I also was thinking about how we report, how we also includes the governance structure in our organizations. I was also thinking about the sustainability goals that a lot of universities is working with, how that is connecting in the governance part. Then we also looked at which outreach specific topics do you cover in your reporting. And then we could see on the top we have student and staff. And then we also report on national and international collaboration, reporting on diversity, and also about equal opportunities and health and work safety. That's the 5 top that we are reporting according to. And then also we had a question about what's the biggest challenges you face in sustainability reporting? And we could see that it's about the data availability and also the data consistency. And we also could see that it's about lack of financial resources, but also staff resources. And then we also had people reporting on the timing and the data comparability. And I think this is a challenge that we all recognize, the one who is working with sustainability reporting. But after a while, when you have done a lot of reporting for several years, I think a lot of these different aspects, or the biggest challenge you think it is, will be easier to handle. We also then asked about the drivers for your institution's sustainability reporting. And as you can see here, what is very high on the agenda is that the belief in the importance of sustainability in higher education. And that is very strong, that we have as universities a very important role. We play a very, very important role in the sustainability work and how we can transform the society. And then also it was important drivers, the monitoring progress of sustainability performance to inform the decision-making processes. And that is also a very strong drivers. We also have a drivers about engaging with stakeholders to raise awareness about sustainability, and also marketing and branding, but that is number 5 if you look at different drivers here. And then you have also compliance with legal regulation, but that is not on the top. So I think this is very important to see the drivers, and I think you also recognize them. So that was some information about how the survey have tackled different kinds of topics, what we report on, and the drivers for doing the reporting. And then I also have some conclusion when I looked at the whole survey. And I think it's very interesting to see that the UN goals are well used in the reporting. And also we are using the greenhouse gas protocol standard. And you can also see that universities is taking part in Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. And I think this gives a signal that it's good to have some kind of standard, as also we have pointed out before in this presentation. I think the reporting covers a lot of different kinds of topics and areas like governance and campuses and so on. But I think we could develop how the reporting could cover more about the impact from the research and its contribution to sustainable development. And we can also, I think, discuss further how we can report on sustainability and how well it is integrated in other levels in the organization. For example, how do we measure the integration of sustainability into our daily activities? Because I think that is very important. I also think that it's important how we can be better to report on how well the staff is trained for working with sustainability in their daily operations and how to change the mindset. I think that is so important. It's something that we work hard at KTH. We have a structure, we have reporting, but still we need to work with the staff and the students and the mindset of sustainability and how we can work with that in your daily operations. And then we can see that we are reporting on energy, waste, and mobility. That is quite clear. And maybe these areas could be areas for discussion if we would like to have common standards on these topics. So with that, I would like to thank for your attention. And I will also send you a welcome to Stockholm or Sweden if you have some time for that. And this is a photo from the north of Sweden. And this is 12 o'clock at night, because in the north of Sweden in the summertime, it's light the whole night. So this is from where I'm being on holiday when I have my leaves in August. So thank you so much. And I will stop sharing here and leave the floor to Davis.
Thank you, Kristina. That's great, beautiful. Some of us remember coming to your university a few years ago. It was gorgeous this time of year. I wish you could be here because this campus is gorgeous too. It's really striking. So we're very, very happy to see. All right, just one piece of housekeeping. There's a paper circulating around about the tour. I hope that everyone has had a chance to sign it. It looks like it got stuck somewhere, but we need to get the numbers back to the organizer. So if you haven't signed that, it's just basically saying, which tour would you like? Would you like the English speaking tour or the Spanish speaking tour? So. Okay, all right, so that was our best efforts. I hope I've convinced you. Is there anybody still on the fence? Anybody think that I'm full of bullshit here? Is it still, you do? Yeah, okay. Okay. All right. Well, we did our best to try to convince you. So here's what I want to do. There's two more parts to this. The first is that we're just going to have a discussion together using this thing called here. Many of you may be familiar with this, but if you take out your phones, just click on that QR code, and then it'll take you to a couple of questions. Now, you'll just get a blank page for right now until I answer, but I want to leave this on until everyone's chance to sign in. You can either go to vents.com or just go here. All right, everybody have a chance. Yeah. No, not yet.
Wow. There's a lot of likes already.
People are loving it. They're loving it.
People are liking it. Yeah, here we go. One more from Switzerland.
Such positive affirmation makes me feel so good. All right, so we have 14 people. Okay, anyone else still? Okay, it's okay if we move forward. Okay, so a couple of things. Let me just put these on. You can vote for it, and then I want to hear your reason for voting for it. So the first question is this. Okay, so there are basically four. I just kind of put this into a quadrant of four. It's hard to see with this in the way, but essentially what we're going from is here are your stakeholder groups. Narrow on one side, so let's say your students or faculty members, and then broad stakeholders. So think about who we're trying to engage. And then on the x-axis, we're looking at narrow, like what are you reporting on? Is it narrow or is it broad? So for example, quite often a lot of our sustainability reporting is right here, right? It's internal, it's fairly narrow, and so can the sustainability reports. We could also have a broader audience, but still narrow. Let's say the example would be science-based targets. This is what we started to talk about, ESG. So it's still more focused on our own community. But then the top left would be the ESG and add in higher ed. So choose which one you think makes sense. Yes, which one? I forgot what the question is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I changed this at the last minute. Yeah, which one do you think will be the most beneficial for us as a sector? Okay, so we are 13. Okay, so I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna call people out. So a couple of people had said standard reporting. Is there anyone who chose standard reporting who would like to explain why? Why is that? Essentially. No.
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Wait, should I not? So yeah, we just do it okay with sustainability report. I mean, we submit our climate stuff through the climate registry. That's like that's almost Paris compliant, but we've not signed up to the science.
All right. So the Paris compliant science, anyone who's doing that one right now? The SB science-based targets. The one person said that one. Anyone have that? That's called you out. Frightened everyone else.
Right. We're definitely separate report. Standing by.
Okay, all right, got it. Okay, there were 5 people who chose ESG ratings and 5 people who put the ESG plus. So anyone would like to explain, like, what do you think about those as good reporting protocols for higher education?
Oh, were we saying what's good or what we do?
Yeah, where do we want to be?
Oh, I didn't answer about.
Oh,
Never mind, take me out of there.
We were wondering if it was what we do at our institution.
Or what we want to be.
Right. So
You want to change
forget
your
what I'm changing my vote.
I'm changing your
Sorry.
GRI is already in place, it has worked, and it has good indicators, and it was made for every kind of organization in the world, everywhere, and in every subject, not only in industry, but universities or whatever. And I think it's very good, so I am amazed trying to think, why do we have to do a new reporting system if there is really there that has worked well?
Yeah, I think that many of us are familiar with GRI or Future Fit. I think we use Future Fit, and there's some arguments for both. All right, so let's just get us started. Let me go to the next question, and you can take your phones. And oops. Yes. All right, so I mentioned the materiality matrix, and so this is basically kind of a materiality matrix on the fly. Essentially what you're doing is you're looking at an X and a Y axis and you're trying to place those on. What you would do is you would ask members of your community. What we've done is we asked all of our senior leadership. We have something called the University Council, Administrative Council, which includes the senior leaders and deans and directors and so forth. And we kind of count them as leadership. And then on the Y-axis, we ask basically the same questions of everyone else, students and staff. And then we try to see where the alignment is. And what we might find is that climate change might be more important for students, less important for administration. Well, that's good to know. Like, what you really hope is that there's a clear alignment. But okay, so here, the question is rate on the following scale of 1 to 5. And so what I'm asking you to do is put each one of these things down. I think everyone has everyone had a chance to? In a protocol. So what we're saying is that if we have a standard protocol, should this be required? Should everybody across the board should be required to have this? What's the right to
I feel like there's a major bias in the poll.
Omar and Kristina, are you also able to do this from your side?
Yes, we are. I am.
Question, what is the materiality index?
So in ESG reporting, they're required to do something called a materiality matrix. And it's very similar to this, where you interview or you survey your leadership, so it's leaders, and then survey your stakeholders, your faculty, staff, students, and then ask them questions what is material to the running of the university. In other words, what's important to be able to do. And what you're looking for is there should be an alignment. Something that's not important to stakeholders should also not be. And if something is out of alignment, then it's not here. So whenever we do this, we always find that biodiversity is not very important to many people in university. Doesn't mean it's not important for us to do, but what it tells us is, according to our stakeholders, we probably need to do a little bit more work to explain why biodiversity is important. Okay, so, all right, so this is kind of a modified materiality matrix, the one that we just did on the fly. But here it looks like what we're saying is from a scale from 1 to 5, that all of these factors are relatively important to our stakeholders, and they're also relatively important for reporting. I think they're all kind of in this 4 and 5 range, at least on average, which basically means that we think that they are quite important. Okay, so as you can see, they're kind of bunched up here, but number 2 is materiality index. That's probably a little bit less important. According to us, reporting boundaries is fairly low, but number 5 and 6 and 4, long-term goals, transparency, and investments, let's see that. And number 5 is social indicators. So would anybody like to explain any one of those factors and why you either had a very strong level of support for one of those, or why one of those maybe isn't as important as others?
I personally think that they're all very important. When I'm looking at this, So when I look at this, I think, yeah, they're all very important. I think we should all try to report on this. I think it's on the how. The how, I think, is how when I think about it, I think it's great. There's some of those that I don't think we report on, or that we're not asked to report on those, especially the investments or governance. We don't currently report on those, and I think it's very important. I think it's very interesting to also see from other universities how to report, or if it would be something that we could actually do.
So the question, if so something like investments, you're not being asked to do it right now, but if you had agreed to a standard protocol and which required you to report on it, would that make it easier for you to get information? Yeah. Okay.
I think it depends. I think that it depends on who would be, or what would be intent of the reporting, right? Like who would everyone want to present this information to what extent would you like to disclose this information? So I think it would depend on a lot of factors, but I think it would be useful for us to have sort of this structure and say, okay, we have to report on this, and we'll be able to learn from others. So it would be easier, I guess, for us to compile the information.
That makes sense. Okay, so one of the arguments in favor of a protocol is that sometimes the protocol allows you to ask for things that are difficult to ask for without it. Right? So maybe some of you in your university, your investments are taboo conversations. I know in my old university, I almost got fired for pushing a little too hard on that. And my senior VP was furious at me. So that can be a little, but if that's part of a protocol, then you're simply just asking for information in the protocol, right? It's not an agenda, it's not your preference, it's basically this. So I have a little story that there was in Hong Kong, that one of the large corporations is called Swire, and they're building, the developers, they own Cathay Pacific, they're just this big conglomerate, and I meet with their sustainability director quite often. And he was telling me that in their last ESG report, one of the elements that they put in was about the gender pay for senior leadership, for senior managers. And there's a gap, men are being paid more than women. So they put that in there. And after that was published, a lot of his colleagues were furious. Why would you say that? It makes us look bad. And but his argument was, if people will forgive us for not being perfect if we're transparent. And he said, when I talked to my colleague, I said, read that carefully. What you'll see what we are. That's true. It's transparent. But underneath it, you can also see here are 3 things that we are actively doing to fix it. And the lesson is that you don't always have to be perfect. You just have to be honest about it, and you have to be able to show that you recognize it and you're holding yourself accountable. So I think that's quite important as well. Okay, all right, so we did ourselves a little materiality matrix. This is kind of what that looks like. I think that what we're saying is that there's a lot of these, at least that we put on the list. They look like things that we would want to include if we were to put together a standard report. Okay, so I want to go back to the slides. Let's see, so down here, put a filter. That's where we left off. Okay. Okay, all right, so one last thing, and then I'd like to, okay. And then I would like I said, this is a workshop, so what I'd like to do is we have 3 tables. I'd like to be able to discuss some of these and start to put together a framework of what a report could look like for 4500. All right, so, okay, so here's the question. If for higher education, why don't we just select one of these existing protocols? And I think that's what you were just saying, right? They already exist, they're already here. Why don't we just use those? I think that's probably a good question. And we love technology. Okay. So here's just, we can do that, and I think that that's a strong argument, and I think you made a very good case for it. Now, here's the reasons why we might want to consider something a little different. So what do these things have that we don't need? Well, first of all, financial disclosure for investors. We don't have investors. We don't need that. Number 2, quarterly report data. We don't do quarterly reports. We're not listed companies, so that's not a requirement for us. And number 3, other investor relations. These are all things that are required for ESG reporting, either it's Future Fit or SPISB or any of the others. So if we adopt one of those standards, we're adopting a lot of extra baggage that may not be important. On the other hand, these do not include things that are very, very important to us. And I think that Kristina just was pointing out in the survey, there's a lot of importance of us being able to report on education, teaching and learning, and research, right, and impact. So these things don't include the impact of sustainability-related research. They don't include goals for engaging students, of course, they're not, and then they don't include teaching and learning sustainability metrics. So one argument for creating a higher ed protocol would be to take all the things that we like about GRI, for example, we slice out the things that we don't need, and then we put in the things that we think are also quite important. All right. Yes.
I was just going to ask about the sustainability reporting standard STARS by Ashi. I think you had it on the slide earlier, but just as far as I understand, that's what STARS is. It's kind of things put applied to a higher education institution.
It is. All right, so that's good. I actually had it on the slide and that's it off because there's a big difference. On one hand, STARS is it's called a rating, right? So it's like a green building rating. You get silver and gold. The difference is that STARS you do typically do start every 3 years, 3 to 5 years, you do once and forget. With a ESG, you really want to do everything, right? You're making progress every year. You need to be able to show, did we make any progress compared to last year? What were the big changes? And you need to add in your targets, right? So you have a goal by 2030, you want to reduce by X amount. Well, you have to be able to show your progress towards those targets. And what this allows you to do is it shows your progress report. So if you can imagine, a list that has kind of this green, yellow, red marking, red means we haven't made any progress at all, yellow means we're kind of making progress, but we haven't gotten there, green means we've accomplished it, right? So there's a number of things in the report that are a little bit different stars. But that's a good question. A lot of this, some of the same information.
But for us at Technomobility, we do sustainability reporting every year based on our sustainability climate action plan, right? Because we have certain goals and objectives that we want to meet, so we report on it every year. And apart from that, we're going to start doing the STARS reporting from ASHI in the higher education impact ranking and green metrics. So they are different, and I think it would be useful, like if there was a way that we didn't have to be coming up with this data all of the time. Yeah, or that if we're doing some sort of protocol at GRE, but focused on higher ed, that might help us, in terms of our yearly reporting. It would give us sort of a standard. I think I do see the difference, and I do think it would be helpful.
Yes, good point. Good point. Yeah, I think we're all inundated on all of these different reporting metrics and times, QS,
Now they have the sustainability.
Yes, so the QS is now that was separate, now it's incorporated in, so don't ignore that. Piece is your overall ranking goes down. So that's what's all. All right, Peter, yes.
I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow at the session on universities engaging with sustainable development goals. But what we've done at Carnegie Mellon University is use the sustainable development goals as our framework to report through the voluntary universities review, which is modeled after voluntary national reviews that countries are asked to submit, and voluntary local reviews, which is what I came up with for New York City, and now 207 cities around the world are doing it. But I am not an advocate for people doing voluntary university reviews. I don't think that that's the answer. So I want to clarify. I think it's a helpful process to inform all of these other things that I don't want to contribute to this reporting overload. So that's just a bit of context. Like there is a way to use the sustainable development goals to help inform all of these other processes. It doesn't require you doing yet another report on another topic. So I'm going to go. We'll talk about more about it.
Yeah, sustainable development goals are quite important. I guess we've had a number of conversations about them. The issue with sustainable development goals is that it doesn't help us with our own personal targets. It doesn't help us with our own.
Strongly.
No, I understand, but you're fitting so the sustainable development goals have a very important goal for all of us. But there's a couple of big deficiencies. Number one, they're 2030 goals, and many of us have goals that are much longer than that. And we have some things that really fit neatly into.
Yeah, they're universal. They don't fit anybody neatly.
Right.
And I think you're encouraged to mobilize them and tailor them to your needs. And it's helpful to have this common language to think through what you measure and why and how it's important. Yeah.
That's what the Times Higher Education background.
Yeah, and I don't agree with their analysis either. I think it's very superficial. But I'll talk about that more tomorrow. I just wanted to flag it as a topic that's relevant that we're
I just wanted to add, we're like right now trying to work out indicators that can work for, I think, every university. And I think even inside universities, the schools, they have different fundings, and that allows them to, to get to more resources. For example, like the school overall, they have more access to funding, which allows them to get to these indicators. like the engineering, the School of Engineering, or others like philosophy, others, they hardly have this title. So it's kind of very difficult, even inside university, to kind of, you know, measure like all the impacts that they have. So even in the inside, you know, when these universities are so big and so ancient, for example, I'm just thinking about like the university that has like schools like for more than 100 years, and even their buildings are so old that they are really managing to keep them, you know, up to date. How are you going to measure all of this, you know, all of these fluids that came out? You know, well, they're trying to keep up with the buildings, and most of them, they're like part of their cultural heritage. So I do agree, partly maybe I'm biased, but the SDGs, they do have goals, but they have even more indicators, they have more targets. So if you really want to do for everyone, I think, I mean, some of them, you know, it's great to have GRI. They have like two types. One is the general one, and the other ones are by sectors. But yeah, I mean, you really want to do indicators that fit everyone, and maybe you should really kind of, I'm not saying that they are lower, but they are more general in the case of the SDGs. So we're really trying to, you know, make every university, every institution, every educational institute fit. Maybe it's gonna have to be more general.
Okay, good point. All right, anyone else? Any thoughts? Yes.
I just had a thought, if all these institutions are trying to report on all these different times and stars or something we come up with here today, would it be an idea to make what we come up with today, the ideal reporting standard, something that if you've done stars, you just give it your stars report, and then you've got as much of that filled in already. If you've done times higher, that can just publish it. So it's kind of coming from GRI and coming from all these other things and making it, like you're saying, like a universal, really wide-based sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So the one thing about the reporting standards is that they also are very flexible. And I think if you're looking at the times higher education and stars, a lot of the same things that you're looking at there would be things that you do. So there should be a way to fit this. So the GRI, the protocols are not necessarily designed to force you into a box. They're basically designed to say these are things that you're probably reporting on, or you should be if you're not. And are you doing it? And can you do it on a regular basis? So those are things that you're doing in the start anyway. And those are things that you're doing. Okay. All right. We have about 15 minutes left before we kind of wrap up. What I'd like to do, if we could get into just 3 tables. So here's what I'd like to do. So I'd like to come up with some ideas, and you can decide which table you'd like to be in. But I think what I hope we could do is, you're in table number 1. Let's say maybe this table right here is table number 1. Discuss the challenges and what stands in the way of implementing a higher ed sustainability reporting standard. And so a number of the things that you just said, maybe they're standing in the way, or maybe those are avenues to help accelerate it. But what is standing in the way, and how can we overcome those? In number 2, so let's say maybe the table behind, let's say I'd like to discuss the leverage impacts, and that's probably where STARS comes in. So how can a standard like this assist in motivating change in the university? So what are some things that you've been meaning to do, or you need to do, or you're getting some blockages, the investment, for example, that was an example that came up earlier. What are some things that come up when you say, okay, this is part of the reporting process, then that might help to open up some doors. And then table number 3, specifically for us, ISCN, what would you like to be the value added of ISCN? In other words, for us as members, so taking the role of developing the standard.